We're also keeping an eye on a number of stories on the national scene, and so many of those stories have to do with the issue of leadership, whether we're talking leadership in government, leadership in politics, leadership in media, or leadership in business or sports. A guy who has written the book on leadership, quite literally, is Steve Adubato. He's the author of the book Lessons in Leadership. He's a PBS anchor. He's a professor. He does a lot of things that we can't even list in just a 2-hour show. Dr. Steve Adubato, thank you for joining me on the radio this morning.
How is my favorite radio host?
Well, I'm not really sure, but Curtis will be here in about 11:30. I will ask him.
You know what? I teed it up, and I knew you'd go there. And by the way, you mentioned all these different titles I have. One of the titles you did not mention is that I'm the dad who gets yelled at by our 10-year-old daughter who says, "Dad, can you keep it down? I'm trying to do my schoolwork." This is while I'm running our company and broadcasting. She's irritated that I'm so loud. This is a fascinating time, Frank.
Yeah, well, I hope you shouted back. Can you keep it down while I'm trying to keep the power on and food on the table? I hope that was the response. However, I think Jennifer might have intervened in.
Oh no, my wife's out of here. She stages home. She's like, I'm out of here. You're working from the house. It's your problem today. But 16-year-old, 17-year-old, and 10-year-old here, all learning while I'm trying to pay the bills, and they're giving me grief. That's all I'm going to say.
All right.
I'm going to be positive from now on, Frank.
Wonderful. Okay, great. It's going to be tough, no matter where people stand on this story, for you to be positive, because I am going to ask you to explain why presidents keep talking to Bob Woodward. You got to, because whether it's Obama, Bush, Clinton, or Trump now for the second time, Woodward doesn't make any of the presidents that he writes about look good, and yet Donald Trump did 9 hours of on-the-record interviews with Bob Woodward. He couldn't have thought this was going to be a pro-Trump book. You've got to explain to me, Steve, what's going on, not just in the president's head, but in the minds of his team, to allow the president to sit for 9 hours with a book that could only have come across as negative.
Frank, I literally wrote in anticipation of our conversation one word: why? Just why? Because I keep thinking about this, and I listen to the excerpts, and I'll listen to more, and we all will. And I kept asking myself, why? I'm a big fan, when I talk about leadership, and I won't get on my soapbox, I promise, I always say that the best leaders are the most strategic and intentional communicators, meaning they don't just talk to talk. They don't just get on the phone with Bob Woodward and shoot the breeze, even though it's, quote, on the record, being recorded for a book when the last book about Obama that Woodward wrote was terrible about Obama. He bashed Bush. He bashed Trump in his other book, I believe, called Fear. So strategically, I keep asking myself, what's the upside? What's the risk-reward? And I didn't see it, particularly if you were going to say to Woodward, and I'll be brief, Bob, this is deadly. It's airborne. It's not just older people. It's children as well. But I don't want people to panic. Then you hold the 6 rallies. And by the way, tells Woodward it's worse than the flu, 5 times worse than the flu. Publicly states, I don't know, it's kind of like the flu. And this isn't whether you like Trump or not, vote for him or not. That's not – I don't care what you do. But I got to say this. In leadership, you have to be a consistent, strategic communicator that does it intentionally and cannot be in a position where you said one thing publicly on the record to a reporter. We're talking Woodward and Bernstein here. He's going to kill you and say another thing in public. It doesn't work, and that, in fact, creates more panic and confusion. Whether you love Trump, hate him or not, it's irrelevant. It's poor leadership and communication, Frank.
No, I completely agree. We're talking with Steve Adubato. He's the author of the book Lessons in Leadership, talking about this explosive revelation of this forthcoming book by Bob Woodward, in which we now know, and there are tapes. This is not something that can be disputed. There are tapes of President Trump saying back in late February or early March, yeah, we knew this was deadly. We knew this was a problem. I knew it was a problem, but I didn't want to create panic. He's essentially on the record saying that he lied to the public, and we can discuss whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But, Steve, let me ask you this. Did Bob Woodward, if he had this information in February or March, Did Bob Woodward, as many journalists are claiming, many Trump critical journalists, have an obligation to come forward to the public and say that this is what the president said? Why hold this until September? I mean, that's 5 or 6 months of maybe Trump supporters or Americans in general taking this virus a little more seriously.
Frank, it is such an insightful and important question you're asking. And I'm not doing this to kiss up to you because you're my friend, but raising that issue goes to not whose side are you on, Trump or against Trump, Biden. You're doing this the right way. You are raising the right questions. And I got to tell you something from a leadership point of view, and journalists, we're supposed to be leaders as well. In my view, Bob Woodward, who I've had great respect for over the years, he failed miserably. Because here's the problem. There is no other explanation that I can see as to why he held on to this information about the president said his experts on health and infectious disease told him it's airborne, told him that it's worse than the flu, told him that children can get it in addition to adults. You know what? I'm going to hold on to this because it's good for my book. There is no other explanation other than the fact that it's good for my book. And here's the problem I have. If you're really a leader and you really want to be of public service, I get you want to make money with your book. I want to make money with my book too. But if I'm holding on to information that could put the public at risk, or, by the way, share with them so that they can protect themselves, that's on Woodward, and I see no explanation that he can give that's credible.
No, clearly, and I think the explanations that I've heard him give so far, that he wanted to provide proper context or this or that,
no.
very
Stop.
lacking.
The president, stop. It's just, sorry for interrupting, Frank.
Yeah.
I get it. You wanted to corroborate. Corroborate what? The president said it to you. You have it on tape. You mean you're going to go to someone else and have them listen to the tape and say, do you hear what I hear? There is no corroboration. Once the president said it, Woodward had it. That's it.
Yeah.
He held on to it. That was against the public interest and irresponsible and terrible journalism. And frankly, worse than that, my opinion, kind of like not really a good American citizen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he had this important information that he could have disclosed to the public and instead chose to, withhold it and use it to make money. We're talking with Steve Adubato. You can see him on PBS on a regular basis. You can see him, you can read him, you can see him everywhere. His book is Lessons in Leadership. Wherever you fall on the political spectrum, it's a terrific book that you can learn a lot from about leadership in the workplace and in the household as well as in government. Let me ask you,
Frank,
Steve.
hold on one second.
Yeah.
Why aren't you plugging my Lessons in Leadership show every Sunday morning on News 12 Plus that's seen in New York and New Jersey? Is there any reason?
Well, no, because I'm dangling that as the carrot. So if the rest of the interview goes well, I will include that plug towards the end. Speaking of failures of leadership, Steve, tomorrow is September 11th. And, 19 years ago, if you look at the federal government, local governments, law enforcement agencies, maybe even the media, there are textbook examples of failures of not just communication, but failures of leadership in agency after agency. There's always a big debate, especially when it's not an even-numbered anniversary, as tomorrow's the 19th rather than the 20th year. How much attention, how much time, how much coverage should the media be spending covering the September 11th attacks tomorrow? What's your opinion?
Well, first of all, let me just share this. For the 19th straight year, I will join a group of people up at Eagle Rock Reservation here in New Jersey in Essex County. It's an extraordinary 9/11 memorial that was built by the folks here in Essex County with private money, and the reason I'm saying is because I'm proud to host that event, and it's not about me. What I'm saying is it is the 19th, and every single year, family members who lost loved ones, first responders, our police, our firefighters, those brave men and women who deserve more credit than we can ever give them, they will all be together, and we will honor those who are lost. And to me, if you say it's an odd year, not you, but if one in the media says it's an odd year, we'll wait till the 20th. That's so disrespectful, and I'll use this word again, un-American, to those who not only lost their lives, but those family members who continue to grieve, because they don't sit there and go, hey, it's an off year, I don't feel so bad. I'll wait till it's the 20th anniversary to really grieve. That's absurd. It's disrespectful, and we need to honor them every day.
And in terms of the media, like, do you think television stations, radio stations, cable channels should be devoting the whole day to September 11th coverage, or do you think that it should be one of many stories that's covered? Because this is always a big debate within newsrooms all across the country, but especially here in New York.
You know, Frank, I got to tell you something. I know we quantify it, meaning how many hours. How do they do the entire ceremony? Do they read all the names? To me, I'm not going to get overly analytical here, but I'll say this. It's more what impact do you have? Meaning, in the limited time we have, yes, I do believe you have to cover other stories because there are so many other important things happening. We're also leading up to this election. This pandemic is consuming our lives in so many ways. I would say continue to tell powerful stories about those who are lost. Be selective about you can't tell them all, and what their families are going through. And the other part, Frank, I got to tell you, why not devote some time to security issues in terms of how protected we are and what we need to do to continue to protect ourselves? Because before 9/11, 2001, we didn't think it could ever happen. So why do we go on? Why do we in the media sometimes go next story? No, this still is the story, but you don't have to do it all day. You have to do it right and do it with impact.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Speaking of some of the other stories that are getting a lot of attention and the upcoming election, I see a lot of my Democratic friends being prepared to do a victory lap in 54 days because Joe Biden is ahead in not just the national polls, but in a lot of swing state polls. These are many of the same polls which showed Hillary Clinton with a commanding lead. Do you think that it's premature for Joe Biden to be measuring the drapes at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, first of all, I don't think Biden's doing that, and any Democrat who is doing that is a fool, because I've lost count of the number of, quote, Democratic friends, as you say, who were convinced of what was going to happen in 2016. But I will say this, Joe Biden, to his credit, we can make all the jokes we want about, wow, he looks tired, is he really awake, or his eyes open, is he understanding that question? But I got to tell you something, last few days, he's been consistently clear in communicating and talking about how he would lead. He cannot take a day off. He cannot take an hour off, because the one thing that I think that potentially President Trump has, no matter how bad things are after this Woodward expose and the tapes, et cetera, is to tie Joe Biden to the far, I'm not even going to use the word progressive because I consider myself a quote-unquote progressive but fiscally conservative person. The more President Trump can tie Joe Biden to that far, far left, dangerous part of the Democratic Party, in my view, that is so far out of the mainstream, it gives the president a chance. And Biden has to make it clear he is a mainstream, law and order, but for social and racial justice, president who would lead differently. If he deviates from that or gives up to the far, far left, he's in trouble, and the Democrats are as well.
Are you watching football this season?
You know, I'm still grieving over the fact that the Yankees have a several $100 million payroll, and they have 5 batters in the lineup who are batting 120. I'm trying to deal with that, Frank, as a hardcore Yankee fan, following a little bit of the NBA with this interesting bubble they have going. And I'll get ready for the Giants. I'm a big Giants fan. You got to be Yankees and Giants. And I'll be ready. And I hope, most importantly, I hope and pray that even though they're bringing us entertainment and I love football, that those folks all tied to the NFL stay as safe as humanly possible. All
right, Steve, since you mentioned, I think even people that are hard of hearing heard you plug this, that you are on News 12 on Sunday mornings. Give us a preview of what people are in store for this particular weekend on News 12 with your program.
Well, I do feel uncomfortable plugging myself, Frank, but if you insist, I will do it. This Sunday at 10 o'clock with my co-anchor, Mary Gamba. Mary's the executive producer of the show. As you know, Frank, some executive producers of media programs also have on-air ability.
Yeah.
You may have heard that.
No, she's the star of that show, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, but also
Certainly
you know what it means. And I will tell you, the best executive producers like yourself and Mary are able to do that. Yeah, we're talking about leading in the age of COVID, innovation. We have a new book coming out called Lessons in Leadership, Innovation in the Age of COVID. We'll be talking about schools and corporations and hospitals that continually innovate to compete and be effective in the age of COVID. That's what we're doing this Sunday at 10
we'll be watching,
on News 12 Plus.
We'll be watching. We'll take your calls next, 800-848-9222. Straight ahead.